Hi everyone, welcome to Mark's 900. I'm Mark. Now today we're going to do a bit of a review of the papers and also some bike news. Now I know that the Mizzle and Flyer has kind of cornered the market on all of this, but he tends to look at MCN magazine, which comes out every week and has got loads and loads of stuff in it. I'm just going to do a much quicker review, and this is going to be using Ride magazine, which comes out monthly. So we're going to look at it this month, maybe do it again if I get some likes and some subscribers and so on. But let's see how it goes. A bit of an experiment, and yes, I am shamelessly ripping off the format of the Mizzle and Flyer, but as I say, he's a god, so go and watch his channel as well. Right, let's have a look at this magazine then. So it comes out every month, as I say, and it costs £4.60. Now you can also get it on your phone in the form of an app. It's a bit too small on the phone for me, but and I don't have an iPad or anything because my kids tend to use them as frisbees. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the paper magazine. Anyway, opening it up, on the first page, on the cover, we've got a reminder that it's time to be welcomed back to the Motorcycle Live 2021. Now this has got a special place in my heart because 2 years ago I went to that. I bought myself a helmet and gloves, and that was me back into biking, but of course I haven't been able to go to it since. So really looking forward to going to that in December. So me and the chaps will be there. Then we've obviously got the editor's welcome to the magazine, and then an index of what we've got going on. Now the one thing I do like about that is that there's a little section called bikes in this issue, so if you want to particularly look up a bike that you know is in here, it just tells you which page to go to straight away. So I don't know if other magazines do that, but it seems like a really good idea. Moving on to the next bit then, standard sort of format for these magazines, it talks about your rides, and the reason I'm laughing about this is because whenever I see something that says your rides, I just always think that what we're going to see is a bunch of white 50-something-year-old blokes who are stood with their dual sports next to a mountain, but on an A road, and sure enough, it doesn't disappoint. There they are. There's a picture of some middle-aged white chaps there. So we could do with a bit more diversity in these magazines, don't we? We need to bring some youth into this sport of motorcycling. And I know the races are all young and everything, but these magazines just seem to be full of, well, quite frankly, people like me who are over 50 and just ride bikes. I'm not saying I need to see a picture of a young lady draped over the back of the bike in front of a power station or something, although actually that wouldn't be bad, would it? It would add a bit of spice to this section. But anyway, the star picture I did like, well, at least I like the subject matter, because we've got there what I think is a Suzuki GT 750 and a Yamaha XS 1100. Two fantastic classic bikes parked up there by the beach. That was a really nice picture to see. And it makes a bit of a change from the usual. As I turn the page over though, I've got some middle-aged chap with his bike parked in front of a mountain, another bike parked in front of a mountain, a dual sport parked in front of a mountain, a Ducati parked near a mountain, and then the final picture of a couple of, I'm going to say middle-aged people, apologies if you're not, but they do look like they're middle-aged people with their dual sports parked in front of a mountain. So that tends to be kind of standard. Come on guys, let's mix it up a bit. Let's get some diversity in this paper, can we? Anyway, moving on. The next bit I didn't think was going to be of interest when I first looked at it, because it's all about riding from Scotch Corner to Catterick, which is up in North Yorkshire. And then I thought, well, actually, I've spent some time living in North Yorkshire. I lived in Catterick for a while, and I've lived in Harrogate. And I've been through all these roads, and actually I wouldn't mind going back. I haven't been back there for sort of 35 years, but so normally I wouldn't be interested in that because it's just too far away. It would take me too long to get there. That would be the adventure in itself, just getting there. But it was nice to see it. So yeah, I read all of that, and it was really well written, nicely written article by the editor Matt, who wrote his. I think it's a Ducati, so we'll see a bit more of that Ducati in a bit. So yeah, no, I quite enjoyed reading that. I didn't think I would, but it was good. And then the next article is what the heck has happened to the used bike market? Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? So something I suppose I always knew in the back of my head, I hadn't really thought about it, which is that the used bike market, the prices are going right up. Now, when I bought my bike back in January of 2021, I got an absolute bargain. It was £8,100 from M&P down in Swansea. And when I look at the prices of them now on the second-hand market, it's about that price, maybe a little bit less, but I've only lost maybe a couple of £100 on it over the last 10 months or so. So yeah, the second-hand bike market is flying, but to be fair, so is the new bike market as well. So new bikes are really expensive, and so are old ones. And I think the thing is, we all come out of lockdown now, and people are going, do you know what, I can't spend any more of my life doing nothing. I've got to get out there and do something. I know, I'm going to get back on a motorbike. So I suspect that's what's happening. We're all got mad keen on bikes, which is a good thing, isn't it? But there we are. Next up then, we get into sort of bike reviews, new bikes that have come out, and of course the one bike that everybody's talking about at the moment, which is the Suzuki GSX S1000 GT. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Anyway, the one thing about this bike, right, it always gets compared to the Ninja 1000 SX, and sure enough, this article starts off, it doesn't even name the bike, it says Suzuki launches Ninja 1000 SX rival. So yeah, the problem I'd have with that bike is people would always be comparing it to the Ninja, so just go and buy a Ninja. I'm not in the market for one of those, but if I was, it would definitely be the Ninja. But there we go. And then underneath, more Kawasaki stuff. They brought out the Z650 Retro. I'm not sure how I feel about that really. I just think if you're going to buy that bike, buy the Z900. But then I would say that, wouldn't I? It looks alright. I guess if you want to ride a 650 like that, there's that. You've obviously got the Triumph Trident, which is very similar, and then things like the XSR, the Yamaha. So there's a few bikes in that category. I'm not sure that Kawasaki were really fixing a problem with that bike, just kind of completing the range, I suppose, the full range of Zs and their retro versions. Okay, fair enough, but not for me, but I guess, like I say, if you're in for a 650, that could be a good option. More interesting for me was the Triumph, and it goes retro with the new Speed Triple RR. Now you'll remember that I did a review on the RS and I thought it was fantastic. That's very much a street bike. And at the time I said the RR was more of a racer. Now it is more of a racing bike, but more of a cafe racer. Actually that fairing is only at the top of the bike, isn't it? And I reckon, given that the fact that they didn't tell us that RR was coming out, I reckon in about a year's time they're going to come out with another version which is going to be fully faired, and that's going to be the race bike version. Now if they do that, I think this RR is going to become redundant because it sort of sits in between the two. It's not really a track bike, it's not really a street bike, and I'd be careful about buying one of those. I think I would wait and see what Triumph is going to do next with that particular line of bikes. I wonder what the next one will be called, because this is obviously an RR. We've got the RS. Will it be the SS, the Triumph SS? Probably not. Maybe the FF, fully faired. I don't know. Anyway, you heard it here first. I reckon that's what's coming. And then it just mentions the motorbike show as well, which of course we've already talked about. A very small article. I thought they might have done a bit more on that. The next page is called Ask the Lawyer, and it's a whole piece on a letter that somebody's written in and said, do I have to pay for a hire bike? I don't even want one after an accident. And it's just a full page of text, and I'm a very shallow person with not a lot of time, so I haven't read that because it just looks really boring. But there we go. Moving on to the letters page. There's the usual selection of letters from people who are ranting about various things, but the one thing, which is the star letter, the letter of the month, it says, has the EU got it wrong when it comes to bikes? And it talks about the fact that Euro 5 may actually use more petrol in a bike than, more petrol and produce more CO2 than the Euro 4 counterparts. So Euro 5 has made things slightly worse. Well, anything we can put that puts the argument forward that says stop doing all this Euro nonsense is good. I don't suppose it'll make any difference, but it's interesting that I just don't know where all this Euro stuff's going. It's ruining motorcycling, to be honest, and it really annoys me. So if somebody's come out with a good point, the fact that it's making things worse, and we can demonstrate it and prove it, then that's good. So that's letters. Then we're going to go on to ride new bikes, the latest bikes ridden and rated. So not just the write-up on them, but they've actually tested them. And the first one they've looked at is very close to my heart, the CB500. Now I used to have a CB500F, absolutely loved it. And this talks about the CB500X, which is like the dual sport version. Now with the 500, the one thing I would say about it is that because it's A2 restricted, it doesn't go any faster or have any better performance than like a 350 or a 390 or a 400. So you've got to think carefully. Do you want to go up to, what's the point of having that 500? It's going to probably cost you more in insurance, and you're not getting that extra sort of performance out of it. So I do like the CB500. I think there are lots of other bikes in the A2 category that are a good comparison. Certainly for a street bike, I think the 500F is the best. And perhaps the 500X is good too off-road. It certainly gets a fantastic review. It says that, you know, it's taken a great bike and made it better, and it's got, what does it call it? The fuel economy is staggering. So yeah, I say I've got a soft spot for the CB500. I definitely think about one of those if I was in that sort of area. Then it goes on to talk about something at the completely the other end of the scale, which is the BMW R18 Bagger. Now my mate's got one of these, he does hundreds of miles on it every week, and I'm not really into bikes that massive. But if you want one, then that's a really good article. Gives you all the facts nice and succinctly in that one little piece there. More interest to me is the piece underneath, which is about an electric bike, Eva's new electric bike. And I sort of scanned down that because I'm not that bothered about the idea of electric bikes. For me, biking's all about going around corners fast and not necessarily the noise that they make. I'm quite happy to have a quiet bike. But when I read through it, I got to the bit that said it cost £26,000 and immediately lost interest. So I'm not quite ready for an electric one, just based purely on cost. Next thing, it talks about 5 things you need to know about the RC350. Well, this comes back to my point about the CB500. Like, if you were to buy the racing version of that, compared to this KTM RC390, I'd go with a 390 every time. I think that looks spectacular. That's a really nice looking racing bike. It's a good picture of it though, to be fair. But yeah, 5 things you need to know. Basically, there are 5 really good things about that bike. Brilliant. The next article pits the Triumph 765 Street Triple RS versus the Ducati Monster. So there we go. We've got the Monster on again. We've already talked about that earlier in the magazine. Now we're talking about it again. So okay. So the Ducati Monster, which they sort of say that look, there's lots of differences between the RS and the Monster. Yeah, obviously the engine's completely different, the brakes different, the dash is different. But they're talking about comparing the cost of ownership, and actually they cost about the same amount in terms of ownership. There's very little to separate them in that respect. So really it's a case of, if you want to go fast and go around bends quickly and all that sort of stuff, then go with the RS. It's a really nice sporty bike and it's got great performance. If you want to pull wheelies and mess about in car parks, then the Ducati Monster. They put the Monster on top. I don't think so. I like everything about that RS apart from the headlights. So I'd go with the RS all day long on that. Strange, but they said the Ducati. Anyway, moving on. The next one, again, this is one of these articles I didn't think was going to interest me because it's all about riding around Ireland. Looks great. And I started to read this and I thought, you know what, me and my chums go away twice a year on our bikes, and we were talking about going to France, you know, we've done Wales and all that sort of stuff. What about going to Ireland? Because this looks really good. I mean, it's got some nice shots of the bike riding past the beach on a back road. It does sort of say if the weather's good, it's a great trip. So maybe one thing to bear in mind, but it looks brilliant. And there's even a pub. They show some of the pubs and the food, which is great. There's a pub with a stormtrooper in it because that's where the cast from, what was it? The Last Jedi went for when they were filming. So any pub where there's a stormtrooper, I'm in, sign me up. So if the boys are watching this, let's get on it. Let's get over to Ireland and do a trip here. It looks brilliant. The only thing that put me off was I thought, well, how do I get there? How much will it cost? Where do I get a ferry from? I can't be bothered to look all that up. But actually, there's a little table down here that says get into Ireland. And it tells me that there's a Pembroke dock in South Wales to Rosslare Ferry, which takes 4 hours and costs £138. Brilliant. Let's do it, boys. Let's go out there in about September time. We'll do the TT and then we'll do this one. How about that? Right. Next up, we talk about the BMW GS. Now, not a bit, well, I like the BMW GS, don't get me wrong, and I loved the long way round, and it's a fabulous bike. It's just got an image problem for me, which is that there's loads of 50-something-year-old blokes that ride around with beards looking a bit holier than thou. I know I'm kind of one of them, but I haven't got a GS. There's something about the image of these that I don't like, and I especially don't want to read this much on them. So I'm going through the pages. It's interesting to see the comparison between like the old Speedo and the new as it's evolved through its, what do they say, 40 years or whatever it is. So that's kind of quite interesting from a technical point of view, but actually I'm just not that interested in this bike. And it goes on and on and on. And then how to buy a brilliant GS. Arguably an oxymoron, but I don't want to be too rude about this bike. A lot of fans out there, I know that, because everywhere I go I always see a GS. But anyway, there's a chap here called Brian Whitehead, 67. He says I bought one. Okay, Brian. And then Alan Cox, I bought one, age 56. Why do they have to put their age on there? I'm not really sure, but they're all clearly sticking to type anyway. So okay, we'll move on. And that seems to be the end of it. So there we go. That was the GS in several pages. It sort of gets worse after this magazine, because it's then got 4 pages, like what's that, 8 sides of information on Oxford paddock stands. Clearly that's an advert. Oh, and then we're back into GS. So we're talking about the GS again. Oh, and we've got Paul Langford, 57, who's got one as well. And there's a picture of his next to a hill, obviously. And then Chris Smith, 61, who's also got a picture of himself with his GS in front of a hill. See what I mean about the lack of diversity in this? And this bike is just, this is the one, isn't it? This is people of a certain age, men of a certain age, parking up by hills and taking pictures of themselves. I can't be doing with it. Anyway, enough about that. That's the BMW section over with. Phew. And it tells me what's going to be on in next month's Ride magazine. Now, really interestingly, at the bottom of that, we've got the new Suzuki GSX S1000 GT, which, of course, it says underneath. Is it really a Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX killer? So, again, they couldn't mention it without mentioning the Ninja. Yeah. So, we'll read about that next month. The other thing on this, which I noticed, it's got People's Bike of the Year. And in there's some nice bikes, but one of them is the new Suzuki GSX, the naked one, which has got those really awful, offensive front lights, the things that are sort of stacked on top of each other, that are just so ugly. I mean, who thought that was a good design feature? I just, like, it's like me with my glasses on like that, isn't it? I mean, it just looks, oh, ooh, I can't be dealing with that bike. And even that small picture of it there has offended me, so I'm going to move on quickly. And I'll go into a bit called How to Ride Out of the Danger Zone, which I thought was going to be a bit naff. You know, let's talk about various things. And there are, of course, 5 experts, all of who are, look to be middle-aged blokes, again, talking about motorbikes and what to do. But they are very experienced, to be fair. They are the experts. And actually, when I read this, it was really good. So it tells you what to do. Bite size are just enough for me, because I've not got a great attention span. And it talks about what to do if you hit gravel, or what to do if you're attacked by a road rage nutter, what to do on a corner that tightens up on itself, or if you ride into a bank of fog, stopped by deep water. And then it goes, there's a really interesting bit here about deflated tyres, because I had a nail in my tyre. I've only had it once. It was on a 125. And I was really pleased with myself, because I thought I was getting rid of my chicken strips, but the only reason they were disappearing was because the tyre was flat. I hadn't really noticed, but that's on a 125, probably a different game altogether on a Z900. And I was never really sure what would happen if a nail went in, and it kind of explains it there, what to look out for, how you know that you've got a puncture, because it can be really dangerous, obviously. So that was good, and loads of other stuff about cars pulling out on you. And then my favourite bit, which is what to do if you feel threatened by bike jackers. And this is written by a guy who's an ex-boxing coach who talks about the fact that you've just got to get off your bike in order to be able to punch them properly. So that was quite good, like that. And then it goes on to talk about being in storms and leaving your bike in dodgy areas. Doesn't mention any of the dodgy areas. There we are. So what looked like it was a bit of a naff section actually turned out to be really entertaining. I like that bit. It was really good. And then we come on to Ride Rated. Now, this is stuff that the magazine recommends and has rated and done some sort of look at, and to decide whether it's a good piece of kit or not, and recommend the best one in its class. And I'm never sure whether they're sponsored or not. You know, are they getting a backhander for putting the stuff in here, or is it genuinely the best thing that they've looked at? So, and these things are really good if you're after something in particular. So for me, for example, I'm after a pair of heated gloves. I know I've got to that age and I haven't got heated hand grips, so I want the gloves. And so I skip through. There's a bit on gloves here, and not really what I was after, but nevertheless, some interesting stuff. You know, if you're in the zone for buying any of these things. Then it goes on. This made me laugh. I love this, right? Talks about sub £100 socket sets, and it does an entire feature on socket sets, right? That are less than £100. Oh my God! Is anyone so bored that they're going to read this? They look at eight different socket sets, right? And this is the bit that made me laugh. The conclusion is it's a close run thing with no clear winner. So they haven't even recommended one. Utter nonsense. And then we get into this year's best kit. So that's just a bit more like what I'm interested in. And it's got my battery powered heated gloves here, which come in at £229 and are made by Fury Gun Heat Blizzards. So that's something to think about. The other thing I wanted as well, incidentally, was the backpack. I need a new backpack. Mine's absolutely worn out. I've had it for years. It's not really a bike backpack. So there's one here by Alpine Stars. Oh, that looks good. And it's a backpack, it's a little rucksack. It comes in at £144.99. 145 quid for a little rucksack like that. Cheek. That's not going to be happening. So we'll move on then to a bit called BMW off-road skills. That's interesting. So for all the people with the BMW GSs, yeah, you can skip past this section because you never go off-road. But if you do go off-road, I guess this looks pretty good. I'm not really that interested in it, but it would be really good for some people. Some adverts, and then we come on to the bike garage, the ride garage, and it's talking about buying, maintaining, and living with bikes, which is, you know, really good. So if you're in the market for a Triumph Tiger 1050 Sport, it gives you a full rundown on what to look for, what to pay, you know, things to look out for on the bike, which is really useful if you're or rather, if you want to buy that bike. That would be very useful to read. I don't really want one of those, so it wasn't that great for me, but it's interesting to see all the different things to look at. And one thing I did note on it was the downpipes. The headers are prone to rusting, and that's one thing I always notice with Triumph is those headers are always rusty on them. And as you know, I do like shiny pipes, which is one of the reasons I like my CV500. That had really nice shiny, high quality stainless steel pipes on it, which I haven't got on the Kawasaki. So it goes into a lot of detail about that Triumph. And then it mentions another bike which I've never really thought of, which is a Kawasaki ZX-12R. I didn't even know there was such a thing. It kind of looks like one of those mental fast sort of racing bikes that you just go very fast in straight lines. And would I want one of those? I'd just buy a Hayabusa, to be honest, because that's what it looks like. And I like the name Hayabusa. Next up then, we've got this review of the BMW S1000R Sport. So it's the naked BMW sports bike. The S1000 is a brilliant race bike. This is the naked version. I think it looks brilliant. There's a guy who's bought one at work and he parks it up in the bike sheds. And me and my mate Dave go out at lunchtime, or we have done, spent 20 minutes looking at this, just drooling over it, going, what a fantastic bike. It really is good. There's some good shots of it as well. There's the guy who writes this, Matt, who's the editor, and he sat on the bike, checking his phone. He's got his leather jacket and his jeans on, looking cool. Great. But the thing about it is, all the reviews I've read say it's a bit kind of soulless and boring, and it's just a boring BMW. Now I know I've given BMW a bit of a bashing in the rest of the paper, but I'd definitely get one of these. I think it looks great. It's £14,850. Well, that's probably about right for that bike. So it's good. It was good to read that. That would potentially be a next bike for me. I like it. Really like that. Next up then, they've got a bit more on the Ducati Monster. This time they pit it against the Triumph Toddler, or the Triumph Trident rather. And oddly enough, it's better in every single way than the Trident. Well, yeah. But they also do a bit of a write-up on the Trident as well, where they say, yeah, you know what, that's also really good. I just wonder if they're being paid by Ducati this month, because there's 3 articles there on the Monster, and it's just been brilliant in all of them. And the next thing they've got is a little piece on the KTM, which is super adventure. So the 1250 or 1290? 1290. The 1290 KTM. I like the look of that. I'd get that over the GS any day. And let's be honest, that's the one that Ewan McGregor wanted in the first place, wasn't it? So yeah, I'd definitely go with the KTM. I think that looks just awesome. That looks nice. It's not a GS. So well done for putting that in there. And then we come on to another piece about the Triumph Street Triple. So despite the fact that he got spanked by the Ducati earlier, for whatever reason, the former editor, Tim, uses his Street Triple every day, and he just goes on to sing the praises of that bike. And, you know, he's absolutely right. It's a fantastic bike. I love it. Don't like the headlights. But apart from that, really good. It does also mention that you would have a problem because if you were going to buy that, you could also need to consider the Yamaha MT-09 SP, the KTM Duke 890, and of course the Ducati Monster. So the last page then, we've got high mile heroes, and there's a picture of a gentleman of a certain age, obviously, stood there with his very old Honda VFR, which refreshingly is in front of a brick wall rather than a mountain. So there we go then, that's the end of the magazine. That was Ride, the monthly magazine. It cost £4.60. I think that's worth every single penny of it. I haven't bought a magazine in years, but I will be honest, I'm going to buy that again. Not everything in there's for me, but then you wouldn't expect that, would you? But there's some really good stuff in it. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading it and reviewing it. Now, I hope you've enjoyed it too. If you have, give me a thumbs up and maybe think about subscribing. And, you know, pass your comments, tell me how I'm doing. I know I'm not the Mizzen Flyer, but I'll give it a go. And maybe we'll do that again in a month or two. Right, see you all soon. Hi kids, Mizzen Flyer here. Hope you're well. We're going to do another magazine review this week. Okay, right. I'm in the zone. I've got the God mode on. Let's do this.